Lawrence was joking about running the wishbone in a game like this, and I was wondering
Uh-huh.
if we're going to see like a 1972 Nebraska Oklahoma, but we're joking about it, but it's not all that far out of the realm of possibility, considering not only are the Bears are ever going to be in these high winds or gusty winds, the Bears' offensive line may be missing both Cody Whitehair and Tevin Jenkins, and they may want to kind of simplify what they're doing rather than have some complex protections in there.
No, I agree with that. And also because of what you are as an offense in terms of what you have at the wide receiver position right now as well. So if you get in a game like that, things do change from a schematic perspective, Dan, right? So maybe more downhill runs, maybe more reduced formations to get David Montgomery a ton of volume downhill, and also Justin Fields. We've talked about before the perimeter schemes they do, but more so the downhill power schemes. I think you're going to see a lot of the similar stuff from the Bills as well with Josh Allen and how they run their offense. You look at Buffalo right now. They traded away Zach Moss. He was kind of their downhill runner. You have Devin Singletary, you have James Cook, two perimeter runners, in my opinion. Their downhill runner is Josh Allen. That's what it is. You go back to what they did against Miami last week, late in the football game. When they needed to run the football, it was Josh Allen runs the football for us. They asked so much out of him. They asked him to be Superman every week for that football team. I think you're going to see it again on Saturday because of what they do with him and an offensive game plan structure, but also because of the weather that he might have to do a lot for that football team.
We always look at this from the perspective of what Justin Fields does to defenses, and now where you have kind of a mirrored reflection with Josh Allen being a physical specimen at the quarterback position. What advice would you give Bears defenders on dealing with a guy that's that big, is that fast, can turn the corner? Like, I get that they're seeing a version of it in practice, right, but it's different when that guy's running at your face.
Get your pads down, first of all, because Josh Allen's not going to slide very often. He doesn't. I mean, you go back and watch the tape. There's some times when he'll try to get out of bounds or slide, but when he runs downhill, he's going to put his pad level down as well. I mean, that's just how he plays. And understand that what he is in terms of the physical profile, which we've talked about with Justin Fields before, but also with Josh Allen, when he gets into the open field, you saw it again in the Miami game. They ran quarterback draw, and the free safety comes downhill and stops his feet short, doesn't eliminate the distance to the ball carrier. He will cut down angles in the open field as well. He is an extremely physical football player as a runner. So if you are a defensive back for Chicago this weekend and he breaks that second level contain, you better be ready to tackle. And it's not just tackling a normal quarterback. It is tackling a downhill runner who is physical at the point of attack and will look to put his pad level down when you drop as well.
We've talked a lot about Jalen Johnson's performance last week against A.J. Brown,
Sure.
And it means a lot for a young corner to travel with a receiver, to say this isn't just your side of the field. Where he goes, you go. This is your assignment. And you can. And I thought, even though he put up numbers against Johnson, I went back and looked at the catch probabilities on the two big ones where he racked up all the yards, and the numbers bear it out. It was a great throw against really good coverage. You know, the advanced numbers tell you it was really good coverage, despite the fact that it was completed. So it was a good game for him. Now, Stefon Diggs presents a completely different challenge. His numbers are just incredible. He already has 99 receptions for 1,299 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, and there's games left. That's crazy. So do you think that Johnson can be used similarly against Diggs, or is that asking too much just because this is a different kind of receiver?
Well, I think the first thing to look at, Dan, is go back to last week. Okay, I looked at the numbers as well. The Bears played man coverage, whether it's zero man, single high man, a little two man, on 65.9% of coverage snaps. That's a huge number for a Matt Eberflus defense. A huge number. They went after him and challenged him. They did. And I agree with you on Jalen Johnson. He is a corner with physical coverage traits. And that's what you need against a player like A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is so good because he can play through contact at the first level, second level, and the third level. And those throws you're talking about were absolutely perfect throws down the field. Perfect throws from Jalen Hurts. It's why he's in the MVP discussion. That's why he trusts his receivers down the field to make plays versus tight coverage. Because Jalen Johnson battled. If I'm his defensive back coach, I'm going to go in there and look at those plays, and there's going to be simple corrections you can make or detail or technique. But in terms of his competitive play styles, urgency and coverage, I'd be very pleased as his defensive back coach. He really battled. Now, against Stefon Diggs, like you brought up, Dan, much different receiver. Also, the weather will play into it. If there's a bunch of snow on the ground, I'm telling you right now, you don't want to play a lot of man coverage because it's just all it takes is one false step, one guy falling down, which happens in the snow, and it's a touchdown. So you could see more zone coverage if the weather, but let's say it's not. Let's say it's just freezing cold. And the guys are ready to play. They're drinking the chicken broth on the sideline. They're perfectly ready to go. So if you're doing that, right, Stefon Diggs does present different matchup issues because of his vertical stretch ability. And really what that is his ability, Dan, to run away from coverage. So if you get beat off the snap in press coverage, it's hard to recover versus a guy like that. Much different style of player than A.J. Brown, but again, still a threat at all three levels, but how he gets there differently. It's more sudden, dynamic ability off the line of scrimmage. When you get stuck in a trail position, it can be lights out.
How have you seen them? Because, I'm always trying to search for any sort of information that can help Justin Fields get to where we think he can go. How did the Bills do this? How did Brian Daboll, when he was there, get the most out of Josh Allen?
Well, I think first thing is the ability to be coached. And you talk to people around the league, and Josh Allen wanted to be coached, right? And that sounds like something very simple. But when you're dealing with pro athletes, how many guys want to be corrected hard? How many guys want to be coached hard? How many guys want to be held accountable every rep in practice, in the meeting room, in the weight room, during walkthroughs? That's Josh Allen. He wanted to be coached hard. I think you saw that development take off with Daboll. Now Ken Dorsey was calling the plays there as well, is how much he developed as a thrower. And look, there's going to be times during a football game when Josh Allen still makes some decisions where you say that's probably a throw he wants back because that's his mentality as a thrower. He's very aggressive. But they really coached him hard from people I've talked to in the league. And now from a schematic perspective, they do a lot of different things. They'll do movement to get him to the perimeter. They'll take their vertical throws down the field, a lot of play action, a lot of clear and replace routes where you can attack and create voids versus zone coverage. And also what he brings is a second reaction player, just like Justin Fields. When things do go south, his ability to get outside of structure and make something happen is very high level. So in terms of what we've talked about this year, the physical tools are very similar, in my opinion. They are very similar in terms of the arm talent, the running ability, the physical element they both play with in the pocket. And that's what you want to see from Justin Fields is that rapid growth, from year 1 to year 2 and now going in next year into year 3, where it really all comes together and you become this elite dual threat player like Josh Allen is.
Do you notice anything in common with some of these bad throws that Fields continues to make on smoke routes and one hitch, some of these close to being laterals where he's all over the place?
That's mechanics. That's what we've talked about before, Dan. It's repetitive mechanics, right? And you don't talk about them as much when you're looking, like you said, like a smoke route, a hitch route, a one-step slant. You don't talk about them as much. We always focus on, when he's throwing the 15-yard square in or the skinny post or the vertical outside. You still have to have the repetitive mechanics, your upper and lower body tied together, your arm angle in the correct slot when you're releasing the football, how you carry the football, how quickly you get your feet set. That's a thing that I think Justin Fields will improve as he plays more and he gets coached more by this coaching staff, is how quickly you get set. One thing about Tua or about Jalen Hurts, and those are two players I'm writing about this week for ESPN and their growth this year and their development. The one thing I focused on with them is tighten mechanics, but also how quickly they get set. That is such an important detail to play in the quarterback position. How quickly you plant your foot and the ball is out. When you're doing 3-step, how quickly you get to 3-step, 5-step, etc. That is what makes them play at a high level, in addition to their talent and scheme. We all know about that. But those mechanics with Justin Fields, when he misses on throws, that's the first place I would look.
And I always wonder how that development from a young age in the NFL, how that development is affected positively or negatively by bad blocking. And just the difference that you have when we were talking about Jalen Hurts behind that line and the luxury it affords you to know that you're going to have enough time to get everything right rather than be hurried.
I agree with you. If you look at, I just watched the tape before we got in the show, the Jalen Hurts deep ball throw to A.J. Brown, the one down the sideline where Brisker had to come over and make the tackle short of the goal line. Dan, the pocket he threw from was perfect. It was like throwing a ball in 7-on-7. There was no pressure on him. Perfect pocket. He was comfortable. He was poised. His feet were perfectly set. And guess what? He threw a perfect ball down the field to beat tight coverage. I agree with you. That has to improve. But with that, I think you will see more development with Justin Fields. That's his natural, right? Look at it from the perspective of the position I play. If you're a defensive back and you don't have a pass rush, well, it's going to affect how you play, right? It has to affect. You're going to be almost more aggressive to try to make a play at times. You know that you're going to have to cover longer in certain situations. That's going to affect you mentally. It all works together.
Matt, I got hyped with the touchdown pass at the end of the game to Pringle. And the reason why is because I felt like that's exactly what all the running that Justin Fields has done. It affects the defense. Darius Slay's a real dude.
Yes,
and Darius Slay was like, oh, that guy's getting ready to run. I better get ready to tackle him. And he didn't even care. Like, he didn't even care that Pringle was getting behind him because he was ready for what was getting ready to happen. So I'd love to know from a defensive back standpoint, from a tape watcher standpoint, what happened on that play, and am I justified in being excited about it?
No, you are. That's a scramble drill. From a defensive back perspective, you have to find and plaster. That's the term I use, find and plaster coverage. So things break down, right? Quarterback gets outside the pocket. Now that wide receiver, let's say he's running a comeback or an out, well, that's not what he's going to do anymore. He's going to come back downhill or he's going to convert vertically down the field. You have to find that player. It requires a ton of discipline to do that against a dual threat quarterback, because natural reactions of defensive players, well, here comes a quarterback outside the pocket. I got to go downhill now and help my defense and cut off the football and make a tackle. Well, when you do that and guy converts down the field, this is what happens. Look, you see it all over the league. Especially with Patrick Mahomes, he's probably the number one example of this. When Mahomes gets outside the pocket and defenders approach the line of scrimmage, well, now he can make any throw possible. We understand that from the different arm angles, the platforms, but also how well his receivers work with him. And that's the other thing about this, Lawrence, is you have to practice that, in my opinion, offensively. You have to practice scramble drill consistently when you have a dual threat player that can get outside the pocket and where you're going to convert. But it does impact players. And like you said, Darius Slay is one of the best corners I've studied on tape this year. That's one of the best secondaries I've studied on tape this year in Philadelphia. So for a high-level corner, an all-pro corner, to make that mistake, that tells you the impact Fields has when he gets to the edges. And again, you want him to do that when necessary, but that impact is great.